With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The UN Secretary-General's personal envoy for Western Sahara, Staffan de Mistura, has begun preparatory consultations ahead of a meeting of the UN Security Council on the UN mission for the organization of a referendum in Western Sahara. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has ordered the immediate launch of the railway line project linking southern cities to the importation of 1 million sheep ahead of Eid al-Adha. As indirect negotiations are resuming today in Doha on how to safeguard the ceasefire agreement reached in Gaza, the UN has warned against the risk of genocide after the decision of the Israeli government to stop supplying the Palestinian territory with electricity. Those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, has chaired a meeting of the Council of Ministers devoted to briefings on several sectors. Ms. Houdsharfi reports.
The Council of Ministers focused on the state of progress of Gharj Bilat Bashar railway line, preliminary studies for the Laghouat Tamanrasset Al Mni'a Timimoun Adrar railway projects, and the possible imports ahead of Eid al-Adha holiday or sacrifice feast, following a detailed presentation by the High Commissioner for Digitization on the digital interconnection of national tax data with the National Digital Database. The President ordered the interconnection's implementation to be speeded up further to remove any human intervention in data management. With regard to the issue related to the livestock imports, the President of the Republic has ordered the Minister of Agriculture to draw up specifications including a price ceiling in order to launch as soon as possible an international consultation with those countries capable of supplying up to 1 million sheep. Regarding the progress achieved as part of the Gharj Bilat Bashar railway line and preliminary studies for the Laghouat Tamanrasset Al Mni'a Timimoun Adrar railway lines, President Tebboune has ordered the immediate launch of the railway line project linking Laghouat to Tamanrasset and Al Mni'a Timimoun Adrar line due to their extreme strategic importance for the national economy as well as for the social dimension of Algeria. With regard to the start of the vocational training year in February 2025, President Tebboune stressed that the sector was now attracting more young people following the adoption by the Ministry of a new vision of training adapted to market demand in strategic specialties. In this respect, he ordered that more young people should be trained in the agricultural sector. The Council of Ministers approved a presidential decree regarding an agreement between Algeria and Slovenia, a friendly country, on the mutual exemptions of short-stay visa requirements for holders of diplomatic and mission passports.
The Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has received the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mrs. Monique Sanzabaganwa, at the Minister's headquarters. She paid him a farewell visit a few days before the end of her term. During the meeting, the Algerian diplomacy chief praised the efforts of Mrs. Sanzabaganwa in serving the continental agenda. The meeting was also an opportunity to exchange views and analysis on developments at the continental level, especially the prospects for strengthening joint African action to face up to various challenges, notably those related to security, politics and development. Algeria has celebrated the 15th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relations with Portugal, as well as the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Good Neighbourliness. On the occasion, Algeria recalled the depth of relations existing between the two countries and peoples of Algeria and Portugal, rooted throughout history. The celebration of these two important events come at a time when relations between the two countries are undergoing significant development in various fields, notably in light of the recent visit by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to Portugal in May 2023. On the occasion, Algeria reaffirmed its willingness to continue working with the Portuguese side to raise the existing cooperation and partnership relations between the two countries to higher levels, as well as to intensify coordination and consultation on regional and international issues of common concern to strengthen the respect for international legality, international law, and the United Nations Charter, and to serve issues of peace and security in the world. The French journalist Jean-Michel Apathy, known for his anti-colonialist positions, has announced that he won't return to the radio station RTL after being sanctioned for having denounced French colonial crimes in Algeria. More details in this report by Assia Bakar.
The journalists have likened French colonial crimes in Algeria to crimes committed by the Nazis in France, which led to his suspension from RTL radio for a week and to several complaints from the French Audiovisual Regulatory Authority, ARCOM. The journalist's statement unsurprisingly provoked reactions from the French far right, which tried to deny the crimes of colonial France that decapitated its victims and kept their skulls in museums. Jean-Michel Apathy refused to return to the radio station as he made no mistake by telling the truth and taking a position of honor. He said he attaches a particular value to the question of the French presence in Algeria between 1830 and 1962, stressing that he was horrified by what he read in books written by renowned historians. Jean-Michel Apathy highlighted that every year in France they commemorate what happened in Oradour-sur-Glane, that is to say the massacre of an entire village, but France committed hundreds of massacres in Algeria and many French people tend to forget about that. He added that by massacring 642 inhabitants on June 10, 1944 in France, the Nazis were the ones behaving like the French and not vice versa. Mr. Apathy refused to apologize or withdraw his remarks as he just recalled proven historical facts since the extermination of entire Algerian villages had been reported by the French military themselves starting in the 19th century, well before the creation of the Nazi Party in Germany. On May 8, 1945, at the very moment when France was rejoicing over the defeat of the Nazis, it had celebrated the victory of the Allies by committing massacres in Algeria, killing at least 45,000 people. Photos and videos still bear witness of this colonial barbarity that would shock even its most fervent defenders today. Massacres, among many others, since colonial crimes began as soon as the French army arrived in Algeria, including the infamous Enfumade, committed as early as 1844 when the French forces suffocated entire Algerian tribes in caves by setting the entrance into fire.
The Minister of Industry, Sifi Gharib, has received a delegation of the Omani holding group, Bahrain, and representatives of the South Korean automobile company Hyundai in Algiers, where they discussed ways to strengthen cooperation. The meeting focused on ways of promoting the car industry in Algeria, and on the occasion the parties discussed ways of working out a joint roadmap aimed at manufacturing cars locally in line with the aspiration of the Algerian citizens to develop the mechanical industry sector and promote investment. The Minister of Digitization and Statistics, Miriam Ben Mouloud, has launched the installation of the first unit of the second national data center in the province of Blida. In another historic step regarding the project to establish an Algerian National Center for Digital Services, Mrs. Ben Mouloud inaugurated the installation of the first unit for the second national data center in Blida. She stated that the President established the High Commission for Digitalization to drive the country's digital transformation. She added that the first digitalization law, drafted through a participatory approach, will be discussed at the General Secretariat of the government next week.
The President has decided to establish the High Commission for Digitalization as a high authority in charge of digitization at the level of the Presidency of the Republic. This also indicates and proves the strong political will of Mr. President to achieve a digital transformation in the country. We have completed the drafting of the digitalization law, which is first law regulating digitalization in our country. We have completed the implementation of the law through a participatory approach involving all sectors, specialists and digitalization stakeholders, and now it will be discussed for the first time at the level of the General Secretariat of the government, hopefully next week.
During her inspection visit to the project, Mrs. Benbeloud welcomed the progress made and took the opportunity during her meeting with the Algerian and Chinese executives in charge of the implementation to issue instructions aimed at accelerating the path of work in anticipation of the project's completion within the set deadlines. The UN Secretary-General Personal Envoy for Western Sahara, Staffan de Mistura, has begun preparatory consultations ahead of a meeting of the UN Security Council of the United Nations Mission for the Organization Referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, scheduled to take place behind closed doors in mid-April. During the meeting, the UN envoy will report on the situation and prospect of the peace process, while the Secretary-General's Special Representative and Head of MINURSO, Alexander Ivanko, on developments in the area covered by the UN mission's mandate. The Sahrawi diplomat stated that as part of the preliminary consultations for the upcoming meeting, Mr. de Mistura met with the Secretary of State to the Foreign Affairs of Slovenia, a non-permanent member of the Security Council. He is also expected to deepen his contacts with the two parties at issue before the UN Security Council's members. The Sahrawi diplomat noted that the upcoming Security Council's meeting will be the first opportunity offered to the new U.S. administration to express its stance on various aspects related to the UN peace mission in Western Sahara, given the United States is the penholder for MINURSO and a member of the so-called Group of Friends of Western Sahara within the Security Council. Moving to the Middle East, as indirect negotiations are resuming today in Doha on how to safeguard the ceasefire agreement reached on Gaza, the UN has warned against a risk of genocide after the Israeli government decided to stop supplying the Palestinian territory with electricity. In a message posted on social media, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the occupied territories, Francesca Albanese, argued that the measure would cause water shortages as all desalination plants are not functioning. She stressed that failing to impose sanction or an embargo on Israel would be tantamount to assisting or helping the occupying authorities to carry out one of the most inevitable genocide of our history. In a similar move, the Palestinian Authority today announced an escalation in the genocide perpetrated against the inhabitants of Gaza, their forced displacement, and the humanitarian disaster affecting the enclave. Several countries, including Germany and the United Kingdom, have denounced the Israeli authorities to cut electricity supplies. In this respect, the spokesman for the UK Premier, Keir Starmer, urged Israel to lift the restriction, saying that humanitarian aid must not be used as a political tool. In Sudan, 9 civilians have been killed and 20 others injured in a shelling of the paramilitary rapid support forces on El Obeid, the state capital of North Kordofan, a strategic city in Sudan South. The shelling wounded 23 people or civilians, 2 of whom later succumbed to their injuries, taking the death toll to 9. Witnesses reported intense bombardment by the RSF on Sunday, with one shell striking a public transport bus carrying passengers on the 3rd consecutive day of attacks from the north and east. And now the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mohamed, has expressed deep concern over the escalating tensions and clashes in Nasir County in the Upper Nile State in South Sudan. Asya Bakar reports.
The tensions included a lethal attack on a UN helicopter and violence in western Equatoria and western Bahr el-Ghazal, all threatening the peace process. The chairperson of the AU strongly condemns this violent escalation and calls for utmost restraint by all parties. He called on the authorities to hold the perpetrators of the violence fully accountable and to take prompt measures to protect citizens. The chairperson calls for an immediate end to the hostilities, adherence to the ceasefire arrangements, and for the parties to urgently engage in national dialogue. In this regard, the African Union Commission is currently consulting with the authorities, IGAD, and other stakeholders on common actions to ensure a de-escalation of the situation. The chairperson reiterates the African Union's long-standing call for South Sudanese parties to fully implement the revitalized peace agreement. The chairperson reaffirms the African Union's commitment to support this key national process on which the future of South Sudan for peaceful coexistence, unity, and collective responsibility depends.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Saudi Arabia to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ahead of talks between Ukrainian and US officials on ending the war with Russia. The United States, once on Ukraine's main ally, has upended its wartime policies in its stated pursuit of a rapid end to the fighting, engaging directly with Moscow while cutting off military assistance and intelligence sharing for Kyiv. Saudi Arabia has played a mediating role by holding talks between Russia and the United States last month. Tumultuous talks between US and Ukrainian officials, the first official meeting since the disastrous Oval Office encounter between Zelensky and US President Donald Trump, are expected to focus on the bilateral minerals deals and how to end the war. Under huge pressure from Trump, who wants the war ended at lightning speed, Zelensky has been at pains to show they are on the same page, despite failing to win US security guarantees that Kyiv sees as vital for any peace deal. Zelensky has said he will not attend tomorrow's talks with US officials and that the Ukrainian delegation will include his chief of staff, his foreign and defense ministers, and a top military official in the presidential administration. Trump said that he expected good results out of the upcoming talks, adding that the United States had just about ended a suspension of intelligence sharing with Kyiv. That's it for today's news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to our economic program. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.
Hello and welcome to our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. First in the news, the Minister of Hydraulics Taha Derbel has said that the sector is working to strengthen the public wastewater treatment service by increasing wastewater treatment capacity, building new treatment systems, and rehabilitating and modernizing existing systems. During a plenary session at the National People's Assembly, the Minister explained that his sector had adopted an action plan aimed at improving wastewater treatment capacity at national level, indicating that efforts included the implementation of new projects and the rehabilitation of existing infrastructure. The Algerian Investment Promotion Agency, API, has announced in a press release the organization of an Algerian-Chinese business forum next April. The Director General of the Algerian Investment Promotion Agency, Omar Rikesh, received the ambassador of the People's Republic of China to Algiers, Dong Guangli, with whom he discussed the progress of preparations for the Algerian-Chinese Business Forum to be organized by the agency next April in coordination with the services of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Ministry of Housing, Town Planning and Urban Development has begun a series of preparatory meetings in preparation for the distribution of housing on July 5th to mark the 63rd anniversary of the restoration of national sovereignty, according to a ministry press release. In this respect, the sector's Minister Mohamed Tarek Bellaribi chaired the meeting at the headquarters of the National Housing Bank, BNH, to prepare for the distribution of housing in the provinces of Betna, Blida and Bishar. During this meeting, he gave instructions for the revision of the program to be distributed next July and the increase in the quota of housing to be distributed. In more Algerian economic news, the number of people who have benefited from microcredit under the program of the National Agency for the Management of Microcredit, ANGEM, reached 17,000 beneficiaries in 2024, revealed the Director General of ANGEM, Souad Benjamil. Thus, the total number of people who benefited from funding under the ANGEM scheme reached at the end of last year more than 1 million beneficiaries in various fields, including agriculture, industry, fisheries, services, and very small industries since the agency was set up. The Commission for the Organization and Monitoring of Stock Market Operations, COSOB, has announced that it has granted final approval to Yinvesti as a participative investment advisor, making it the first approved platform in the crowdfunding sector in Algeria. This authorization was granted after the company had met all the technical conditions required in accordance with the provisions of Commission Regulation number 2301, dated 12 April 2023, setting the conditions for authorization, exercise and control of participative investment advisors, the regulatory authority said in a statement. The Minister of the Environment and Quality of Life, Najiba Jilali, has said that the sector's waste management strategy is based on selective sorting and the circular economy with the aim of achieving sustainable development and a green economy. The new strategy is based on recycling the various types of recoverable and reusable waste as part of the new development model for Algeria 2035. The emphasis is on reducing waste production at source by prioritizing selective sorting, enabling 30% of household waste, 30% of special waste, and 50% of inert waste to be recycled. And to wrap it up, the first national meeting of the National Foundry Industry Cluster, Foundry Tech Cluster, has been held at the headquarters of the Ministry of Industry with the aim of examining ways of developing the foundry industry and strengthening its integration with other industrial sectors, according to a ministry press release. The meeting was chaired by the head of the ministry's General Secretary, Salim Ahmed Zaid, and the Director General of Industrial Development, Bindri Mia Said, in the presence of representatives of several ministries and bodies, as well as a number of public and private economic operators active in this field and related sectors. And with this, we come to the end of our program devoted to Algerian economic news. Goodbye.
And good to have you with us in this fresh edition of Inspiring Figures. The Islamic Golden Age, a period of cultural, economic, and scientific flourishing in the history of Islam, traditionally dated from the 8th to the 14th century. Shed light on a prominent physician, the most famous and influential of scientists of the medieval Islamic world. Avicenna, or Ibn Sina in Arabic, whose full name is Abu Ali al-Hussein ibn Abdullah ibn Sina, was born in 980 near Bukhara, Iran, now in Uzbekistan, and he died in 1037 in Hamadan, Iran. He was a Muslim physician, the most famous and influential of the philosopher-scientists of the medieval Islamic world. He was particularly noted for his contributions in the fields of Aristotelian philosophy and medicine. He composed the Kitab al-Shifa, or Book of Cure, a vast philosophical and scientific encyclopedia, and Al-Qanun fi al-Tibb. The Canon of Medicine, which is among the most famous books in the history of medicine. Avicenna did not burst upon an empty Islamic intellectual stage. It is believed that Muslim writer Ibn al-Muqaffa, or possibly his son, had introduced Aristotelian logic to the Islamic world more than 2 centuries before Avicenna. The first Islamic Aristotelian philosopher, and Turkish polymath Al-Farabi, from whose book Avicenna would learn Aristotle's metaphysics, preceded him. Of these luminaries, however, Avicenna remains by far the greatest. According to Avicenna's personal account of his life, as communicated in the records of his longtime pupil Al-Juzjani, he read and memorized the entire Quran by age 10. The tutor Natili instructed the youth in elementary logic, and having soon surpassed his teacher, Avicenna took to studying the Hellenistic authors on his own. By age 16, Avicenna turned to medicine, a discipline over which he claimed easy mastery. When the Sultan of Bukhara fell ill with an ailment that baffled the court physicians, Avicenna was called to his bedside and cured him. In gratitude, the Sultan opened the royal Samanid library to him, a fortuitous benevolence that introduced Avicenna to a veritable cornucopia of science and philosophy. Avicenna began his prodigious writing career at age 25. Some 240 extant titles bear his name. They cross numerous fields, including mathematics, geometry, astronomy, physics, metaphysics, philology, music, and poetry. Often caught up in the tempestuous political and religious strife of the era, Avicenna's scholarship was unquestionably hampered by a need to remain on the move. At Isfahan, under Ala ad-Dawla, he found the stability and security that had eluded him. If Avicenna could be said to have had any halcyon days, they occurred during his time at Isfahan, where he was insulated from political intrigues and could hold his own scholars' court every Friday, discussing topics at will. In this salubrious climate, Avicenna completed Kitab al-Shifa, wrote Danish Nama, Book of Knowledge, and the Kitab al-Najat, or Book of Salvation, and compiled the new and more accurate astronomical tables. While in the company of Ala ad-Dawla, Avicenna fell ill with colic. He treated himself by employing the heroic measure of 8 self-administrated celery seed enemas in one day. However, the preparation was either inadvertently or intentionally altered by an intendant to include 5 measures of active ingredients instead of the prescribed 2. that caused ulceration of the intestines, following up with Mithridat, or a mild opium remedy attributed to Mithridat, king of Pontus. Well, a slave attempted to poison Avicenna by adding a sulfate of opium.